The sine function was discovered by astronomers in ancient times. Greek astronomers wanted to chart the positions of the stars in the sky, and as they pointed the telescope to the star, they measured the angle that the telescope was pointing, and then they drew an imaginary line from the star down to the red line running through the center of the Earth. The height of the star, that distance, gives us the value that we know today as the sine function. So if the telescope is pointing straight up, the height of the star is 100. If it's pointing all the way across the horizon, it's 0. And at points in between, it goes all the way from 1 at the very top down through 97, 87, 71, 50, 26, and finally 0. Now, the sine function is calculated by dividing the height of the star from the star down to the red line by the radius of a line going from the center of the Earth to the middle of the star. And if you divide in the radius, in this case is 100, so if you divide the height of the star, that is 87, by 100, then you get the sine of the angle being measured as 0.87. So once again, if we start at the very top, the greatest that the sine value can be is 1. And then as we gradually turn it, it drops to 0.97, 0.87, 71, 5, 26, and 0. So this is where the sine function was first discovered. And then, as it turns out, it has great applicability to being able to describe motion of sound and vibration. And we can take this function discovered many years ago and use it to create sound with a computer, which we'll explore in the next module. Now, the word sine itself has an interesting derivation. The Indian astronomers originally wrote the word Sanskrit, Jiva, to mean this line that would go from this point to this point. And because when they stretched a line from that point to that point, it looked like a bowstring, they used the word for chord or bowstring to describe that function. Arab astronomers translated that word Jiva into Jiba, which means fold, like a fold in a toga. And then when it was translated into cavity, into Latin, the word for cavity, like a fold in a toga, became sinus. So, for example, you can talk about the sinus of in a person's head. That means cavity. So, in this way, the word sine was translated from a word that originally meant bowstring or chord into a word that means cavity. So, the word that we use to describe the sine function today has nothing to do with the original meaning of the word in Sanskrit, but it's the word that everybody uses by tradition. So that is how the sine function was discovered, and in the next module we'll see how we can use it in modern times.